welcome back to another Heather Mac Reacts. Today we're going through this one story from entitled people on Reddit. A friend of mine, shout out to Cheryl, found this story for me and said it is wild. So that's what we're going to be going through today. It's 4 parts, it's long. Let's get into it. My Mother is Psycho and entitled Part 1. Some backstory. My mother and I have never gotten along. Ever since I was little, she has gone out of her way to be very toxic, controlling, and overbearing over every aspect of my life while giving my siblings more freedom. This amped up when my kid was born. Me is for me, B is for my kid, EM is for entitled mom. Like I said in my backstory, my mom and I have never gotten along. She liked controlling my money and my personal life. It was awful. The fights alone were good enough to be on television as one of those reality TV shows. I had lost good relationships with boys, even friends, because of her. After my son was born, her controlling ways got even worse. She'd butt into my parenting, essentially taking over as my son's primary caregiver and decision maker. She told me that because I live in her house, it was her right as the grandmother to do whatever she liked, and if I didn't like it, I could sign off my rights to my son and leave. I think not. Of course, I refused to do this and stayed because I wouldn't abandon my little B, which is the son. I will admit that I wasn't in the best financial position when I had B. B's father and I had broken up and forced me to move back home with my entitled mother, EM. I hated it. Over the next couple of years, I let EM have her way, my mom have her way, all the while working my ass off at a night job and was saving money. She stole the money I had saved up more than once, so I was forced to get a bank account. I was fine with paper checks and cashing them at our local check cashing place up until that point, but because she kept stealing, claiming my money was her money, I had to get creative with where I hid my cash until I got the bank account. Because it was a bank-issued debit card, it requires a PIN to purchase things. I, of course, came up with a special PIN number that she would never guess. One night, I am cooking dinner for my son and my mom bursts in demanding to know where my money is. I tell her that I had set up a bank account for myself. She flipped out. She managed to know the PIN to my debit card so she could take out the money, and I gave a big fat no. She screamed at me for being selfish and that she deserves the money more than me because me and B live in her house and I wouldn't give up the PIN. Then she would cut the card into ribbons so neither of us could have it. By this point, on the advice of a friend, I had begun recording my mother whenever she began to misbehave for any reason. After telling her I wouldn't give up the PIN, she grabbed the scissors and chopped my debit card into tiny pieces. I know I could just go take out the cash if I needed to, and I had discovered a convenient hiding place where I had been stashing my cash, so I wasn't worried. I requested a new card the next day and went about my business. This is already freaking wild. Sometime later, when I had saved enough, I began looking into apartments. I found one close to work, and there was a daycare center a few blocks away, which would be perfect for B and I. I got a friend to go with me, and after a bit talking with my new landlord, I signed the lease, paid the first 3 months of rent, and got the keys. I was stoked to say the least. I went to my mom's house and began packing right away. She barged into my room without even knocking and asked just what the hell I was doing. Of course, I picked up my phone and began recording right away. I told her that me and B were moving out. Without any hesitation, she began screaming, demanding to know where I was taking her kid. I refused to tell her, so what does she do? She calls the police. The police arrive, and before I had the chance to explain the situation, she begins ranting and raving that I am kidnapping her child. Her child! The officer looks at me with suspicion, but then relaxes when I tell him B is my kid and that we are moving out. She flips out even more, demanding the officer arrest me and force me to sign over my parental rights to her and to interrogate me into giving up my bank details. Is she actually psychotic? The officer sighed, the kind of sigh like, why the hell was he even called out to the situation? He told my mother that he could not arrest me for moving out because I'm an adult and B is my child, and he couldn't force me to sign over my parental rights, nor could he force me to give up my bank information. He then told her if she wanted to go for grandparents' rights, she most certainly could, but given how unhinged she is, just because I am moving out, it doesn't seem like she is within the right frame of mind to be anywhere near a child, let alone her own grandchild. This did not go over well, at all. As the officer was leaving and I was in the process of packing up some of B's things, she lunged at me and began scratching my face. I naturally defended myself and shoved her away from me. She screamed at the officer to arrest me for assaulting her. The officer sighed again and said he had seen her lunge at me first and me shoving her was defending myself. He then added that someone would be going to jail tonight and told her to put her hands behind her back. I never felt so grateful for police in my life. I will add with a part 2. Y'all,
I'm getting fired up over this one.
Okay, part 2. Well, my mom was being carted off to jail for a nice relaxing cool down in lockup for the evening. I took the opportunity to pack everything I could within the time I had. My siblings were understandably upset that the mom had been arrested, but after explaining the situation, they didn't really try to stop me either. I secured a moving van, packed up everything, and went to my new apartment with B. A friend helped me unpack some basic things, helped me set up B's bed, and we got Chinese food. The feeling of relief swept over me like a tidal wave. After years of being abused, stealing, being controlled, and being stolen from, I was free. I don't think I ever cried so hard. I'm still in therapy. You poor thing. Eventually, I was unable to continue working nights because finding childcare at those hours was impossible, and almost everyone in my family had disowned me for hurting my mom. What about all the hurt she caused you? I found a job that paid close to $3,000 a month and it was above my skill level, but thankfully it had a full training program and I was able to afford the daycare close by and still make enough to pay the bills and have a little extra for savings and fun things for me and B to do on the weekends. While I was glad to get away from my mom, B would often say he missed her and how much he liked the presents she gave him. Oh, love bombing? Well, I didn't let B go without. He certainly wasn't getting as much as he did before. Of course, I didn't want to shatter his view of his grandmother and break his little heart, but I didn't want to lie to him either. I told him that EM was no longer in our lives because she treated me very poorly and it had gotten to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. B is 7 now. He understands when adults are being mean to each other. He knows she was mean to me, but he did like that she was nice to him. He's a kid, so I won't hold that against him, even if it makes me grumble a little. Fast forward a year, I had made our apartment into a home. B's bedroom was stocked full of toys, clothes, a bed, books, and the fridge was always full. On my income, I was able to buy myself the queen bed of my dreams. I afforded us a comfortable life. While we weren't rich, we had enough money to live, and having financial stability was something I never thought I would have under my mom's control. I'd even started seeing a very awesome guy I'd met on a lunch my boss was throwing. We hit it off immediately, and B absolutely adores him. After having no contact with my mom for a year, I was surprised to see that I had a message over Facebook from one of my siblings. They asked me if I'd be willing to talk to the mom and try mending the rift because she missed B and wanted to mend our broken family for B's sake. I didn't want to. I felt like this was some ploy to get her claws into B and hurt me again. Just looking at the message made me have a PTSD episode. I was scared, very scared. After my boyfriend helped me to calm down and told me that talking to my therapist might help, I called her and set up an emergency appointment. My therapist told me that EM reaching out might be sincere and at the most that will happen is the visit going bad and I go back to no contact again. I wasn't worried about there being an argument. I was worried she might steal or worse, kidnap B if I turned my back. My paranoia was all over the place. After thinking it over for a while, I decided to not let fear control me. I messaged my sibling back and we made plans to meet up at a public place for lunch. I agreed to bring B with me, but I made the condition that my boyfriend would join us as well. My sibling wasn't happy with this, but hesitantly agreed. Red flag number 1. As much as the day of the lunch approached, EM sent a message to me on Facebook saying how much she missed B and that she had loads of presents for him. I said I am sure he will be very grateful for the gifts, and EM said she had one for me too. To avoid an argument, I thanked her and told her I would see her at the lunch. She assured me I would be shocked when I opened my present with a devil grin emoji. Red flag number 2. I don't know if I like where this is going, y'all. On the day of the lunch, my anxiety was shooting through the roof. I kept changing my mind about my boyfriend, but my boyfriend assured me he would be there for me every step of the way, and if I was uncomfortable and wanted to leave, he would grab me and get the F out of there. After some more freaking out, we got into the car and arrived at the restaurant. My boyfriend was kind enough to pay for everyone's lunch, and EM took full advantage, ordering the most expensive thing on the menu, including an expensive cocktail and even an extra dish to take home later. I can't with this woman. I was understandably annoyed at this, but my boyfriend simply smiled and said whatever she wanted. After we ate, B and EM hugged, and B opened all the gifts she had gotten for him. He was super happy and excited to take everything home to play with them, but she stopped him and said the toys would be for her house and that B was welcome to come play with them whenever he wanted. I nearly spat out my drink. This got her attention and she smiled at me. That smile was faker than fake, and said she wanted to hand deliver my gift in person. She handed me a large brown envelope. I almost didn't want to take it, worried she had put anthrax or something in it, but I took it and opened it. She was petitioning the court for grandparents' rights. I immediately exploded, standing and throwing the papers at her, shouting at her that she will never get her hands on B and she would over my dead body and rotting corpse. I grabbed B, my boyfriend, and we immediately left. B was sad he couldn't keep the gifts, but I promised to buy all of them for him myself, and we didn't need her in our lives. I felt humiliated and tricked. The only good to come out of this horrible episode is that they were left with the bill. Good. You ordered all that food, ho, and you have to pay for yourself. Okay, that's all we're gonna do for today. The second half of this wild, incredible, crazy, ridiculous story is gonna be posted tomorrow. Make sure to subscribe so you get notified when that comes out. And like, comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.